Hello. I've bought a couple of things over the last few days. So I've actually looked around a few shops. Very little around, really. But here are some things I found. First one was Indestructible by Disturbed. This was $1, and I really tossed up whether to get this because I'm not really the biggest fan of Disturbed. I have only heard, actually, I've probably heard quite a few songs of theirs, but the songs that I actually know are probably about five, and they're all quite similar. They've got a very kind of recognizable sound. I guess you could say that about them. Vocalists, obviously, very recognizable, for good and for bad. And also, they're kind of, I don't even know how you really describe that. Like, I guess they came out around the new metal time, and they kind of do sound a bit new metalish, but they're a bit more. I don't know how you'd even describe that kind of metal, hard rock metal, very syncopated. When I think of Disturbed, I think of syncopation. So I don't know where this album stands in their discography, like if it's a better or worse or whatever. This came out in 2009, I think I saw, when I was, 2008. And I listened to it in the car on the way back from buying it, and it wasn't bad. It certainly wasn't bad. It's kind of highly produced, and you see it's produced by Dan Donegan. I think he's the guitarist, and co-produced by David Draymond and Mike Wingren. David Draymond is the singer. So the band produced it themselves and mixed by Neil Avron. Yeah, so it's not bad. You can kind of see why it's popular, why it kind of appeals to people. It's kind of like easily accessible metal. The guy's voice is a bit people have made fun of it. Like, he used to do those sound effects like a monkey. Ooh ah 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 type stuff. What was that song? Was that Down with the Sickness? I think was that one. And then the first song I ever heard of theirs was Stupefied. And that's got speaking of stupid, in that song he does that thing with his vocal thing, like wow. Like at the end of in the verses, he sings a line, at the end of every line he does this wow thing. And his vocals are quite, again, I was saying syncopated, they're quite syncopated as well, the way he sings. Again, whenever I kind of talk about these things, I don't have enough musical, theoretical knowledge to explain, but kind of goes along with the drums and the guitars and kind of a in-step rhythm, everything they do, the vocals and the instrumentation. There's the band there. So that's David Draymond, the singer, the bald guy, who always has those silly piercings under his lip. So they're kind of like metal horn type things. He's very outspoken on Israel, and I think, I don't know if he was born in Israel. Maybe he was born in Israel. He spent most of his life in America. He's certainly Jewish. Maybe he he spent some time there in his youth, like went to a kibbutz or something like that, or what did they call it? Oh, birthright. Maybe he did like the birthright trip. And I've been seeing a lot of headlines recently where he's giving his opinion on all that kind of stuff. I think that's Dan Donegan. That, I think his name is John Moyer. That might be Dan Donegan. I don't know which one's which. I'm pretty sure it's him though. The reason though, the bassist, I think it's John Moyer? Yes, John Moyer, is because Wingren is the drummer, so he co-produced with Draymond. John Moyer played in Jeff Tate's Queensryche, Fake Reich. When I've talked about this so many times in various videos over the years, but in 2000 and was it 2012-ish? I think 2011, whatever. In the early 2010s, Queensryche fired Jeff Tate, and the rest of the members carried on with a new singer, Todd, and Jeff was bitter about that, obviously, and I understand why. He went and formed his own. With so many of those 80s bands, there's like two versions, like Rat. There was two versions of Rat for a while, and Great White. There's a couple of versions of Great White, and sometimes they just change the name a little bit, or they'll add something to the name. Like I think it was Jack Russell's Great White, to differentiate it from the other Great White. Although I shouldn't just, other bands do that as well, like Children of Bodom, the Finnish, what do you call them, metal, kind of death metal-ish band. When Alexei wanted to break the band up or leave the band, the rest of the band members carried on with the name Bottom After Midnight or something stupid like that, or Bottom After Dark. So it was Children of Bodom in its original, and then it became Bottom After Dark. And then Alexei is, of course, he died now, so I don't know what that means for the future of that name. Anyway, John Moyer, my original point was, John Moyer, the bassist in Disturbed, played in Jeff Tate's Fake Right. It existed for like 1 or 2 years, and they rushed out a record, Frequency Unknown, to kind of get a first in the marketplace. And it was Jeff Tate was the singer, obviously. He was the original singer of Queensryche. John Moyer on bass. Who was on guitars? I think at some stage Glenn Drover was on guitars from, he was in Megadeth earlier, and then I think Kelly Gray ended up just doing the guitars. And then who was Simon Wright? Billy Blotzer from, what's he from? Is he from Rat? I guess I'm mixed up with those fucking 80s bands, so I don't know. I think Billy Blotzer was from Rat. He was in the band for a very short period. Then it was Simon Wright, formerly from, he was in AC/DC in the 80s, at that period between when Phil Rudd left and Chris Slade joined. That's kind of 80s albums, like Who Made Who and that kind of one, Fly on the Wall. Simon Wright was the drummer for AC/DC during that time. So he was in the Jeff Tate Fake Right, and then a couple of other people. It was kind of like just like a mishmash. Because he just pulled random people from bands, anyone who had any sort of name. And then the album was even more so. There was so many guest appearances. I mean, KK Downing did a guitar solo on one of the songs. I remember that. The guy from Y&T, speaking of 80s bands, Y&T, he did a guest something in that. Anyway, this is not really important, is it? So yeah, this is the first Disturbed album I've ever heard. Ever owned. And yeah, I was almost like, I don't really like Disturbed. Why don't you? But I was like $1, and I thought, well, I've never owned a Disturbed album. Why not? I hadn't bought anything for a long time either. So yeah, not at the same shop, at a shop just along the way, in the same block of shops, I picked this up. Now, I didn't look at it very closely. All I saw was Final Symphony. Now, the reason I first picked this up is because it was in the CD shelf. So usually in the secondhand shops, they have the CD area and the DVD area. They don't mix it all together. They'll usually clearly differentiate and have like a shelf of DVDs or Blu-rays and a shelf of CDs. And then the LPs or the records in another place. So this was with the CDs. And usually I wouldn't pick this up, but because of the shape, it's a little bit smaller than a DVD case. And in Japan, when you go to the shops there, sometimes they sell CDs in this size case. If it's a special edition or something, they'll have that, and then they'll have like this, like a booklet. And so I didn't really look at this closely, or didn't really look at all. I just kind of looked at music from Final Fantasy 6, 7, and 10. Now, have I ever bought a have I ever played a Final Fantasy game? I may have played one game, one of them. I'm not. I haven't played a video game full stop for probably about, well, since my son was born, basically. Oh no, a little bit actually. No, that's not true. A little bit after he was born, I because when I was living in South Korea, I owned a PlayStation 3 console, and so I had some games on that. I mean, I had Fallout 3, and I had GTA, the most recent one, which is 5. 4, no, yeah, 5. That's right, 5. And I had some sports. I know, ice hockey game, NHL, one of the NHL games. I used to play that a lot. But since we left, we came back to New Zealand. I sold that, well, actually gave it away, and that would have been, well, almost 6 years ago, 5 years ago. And so I haven't played a video game in 5 years. And I was never really on the cutting edge of video games. I was always kind of a couple of generations behind what was ever. So, and back then, I think the PlayStation 4 or 5 was out, and I still had a PlayStation 3. So I've never been a big gamer, at least in my adult life. And I certainly have never been a big RPG gamer person who, like Final Fantasy, where you build a character with like all the stats and you walk around doing shit. I didn't really have the patience for that. But I know Final Fantasy is one of those kinds of games, and it's a very famous game, a very famous franchise, and kind of beloved. Certain, not all of them. I think some of them are shit, but some of them are absolutely beloved by certain kinds of video game fans. I generally am interested in not modern stuff, but more kind of older video game music. I used to listen to a podcast about it, and they would upload stuff, and you hear there's a lot of like kind of interesting stuff with video game music. Like it's there's just so much of it, and a lot of it is just kind of repetitive dross, but some of it is you'll find like a gem. And so I just thought, oh, okay, why not? And I picked it up, and I kind of opened it quickly, and I thought, oh, there's a booklet, that's nice. And I obviously didn't look very close at all, because if I can see it's Blu-ray right here, I didn't look at that. Probably looked on the back, but it doesn't say anything here. You can see it was $3, so it's actually a little bit more expensive than most things I buy. Square Enix Music is a Japanese music label. I think it is under Sony. I think it's an imprint of Sony. I could be wrong on that. But certainly Square Enix, you see that in Japan around, places. So anyway, it's getting to the thing. It's a Blu-ray. It's not a CD. I got home and I put it in, and my CD player went meh, meh, and then the door opened. Like, no, don't. We can't play this. Sorry, it's not a CD, and you can't play it. But this is an original Japanese release, because you can see here again, Square Enix. Maybe it's a music store. No, it isn't, because if it's anyway, I assume this is all going to be in Japanese. So yeah. Nobuo Uematsu. Well, let's go to English as well. So that's kind of a bit disappointing, because I would have liked to have heard, but I don't have a Blu-ray player, don't even have a DVD player, so I can't play this on that either. But I'll keep it, and maybe one day I will have the chance to do so. Circle within a circle within a circle, symphonic poem born with a gift of magic, piano concerto, Suteki Dane, symphony in 3 movements. So I assume it's a symphony orchestra performing the music, yes, of some of the installments of the Final Fantasy franchise. All these guys, I guess, are composer and arranger, John Valtonen. Played by the London Symphony Orchestra. It's all very kind of seems important. It was mixed at Abbey Road, mastered at Abbey Road, and recorded and mixed at Abbey Road by Simon Rhodes. Simon Rhodes, that name sounds familiar. Simon Rhodes. Anyway, yeah, so that is kind of a strikeout, that one, isn't it? A miss, because of my own lack of care and looking what I'm looking at. Anyway, and the third thing, on the weekend, me and my son caught the bus into the city because he wanted to buy a dragon. They have this market in the city on the weekends, and they're, different stall holders selling things, and one guy sells these 3D printed dragons. Actually, it's over here, I'll get it. And my son saw it a few weeks ago when we were walking around, and he was like really impressed with it, and he kept on talking about it, and it was his birthday recently, so he had some birthday money. This is the dragon. Kind of moved, it's like all like... And so I said, okay, we'll go to the city on Saturday, and we caught the bus over because he likes to go on the bus. And he bought this, which, to be honest, was not something I would buy when I was a kid because it was quite expensive, and it's not the kind of thing you can really play with. Well, you can, but it's more ornamental. You can play with it. It's not going to break or anything. And it's 3D printed. That was the thing. It's like, these are made. You can probably tell by the texture. 3D printing often has this kind of, what you'd call it, lined texture. But it's quite, I don't know. There's something about the way it moves is a little bit lifelike. So anyway, my point of showing you this dragon is that we went there to the city. My son's at school at the moment, so, on the weekend, and then after he finished there, seeing as we caught the bus all the way over there, I said, okay, well, I'm going to go look up in a music shop. And when I go into a music shop with him, I try and get in and out as quickly as possible. I just kind of have a quick overview. I don't have time to look in depth like I usually would because it's boring for him, and I know that. But he'll usually be interested for a little while, for like kind of 10 or 20 minutes. So we're in there for about 10 minutes. And in the sale pile, I found this, an album I actually used to own and I haven't thought of or seen in years. You may not recognize it. It wasn't a huge album, to be honest, but it was their major label debut. And the band is the Icarus line. And this is called Penance, Soiree. The Icarus line came out in that early, mid-2000s, was it 2003, I think this came out in. Early, mid-2000s garage rock revival, indie rock revival of bands like The Strokes and The White Stripes and The Vines and The Hives. And the Yeahs eventually, that kind of was moving in another direction. Those kinds of bands. And these guys were from LA, and they were closely intertwined with the website Buddyhead, which you might have remembered, buddyhead.com. Again, around in that similar time, back when the internet wasn't as aggregated as it is now, where you kind of can find everything on one place. Like, you go to Reddit and find different stories and links from around the internet. Well, you used to have, more, you'd go to this page for this and this page for that. And Buddyhead was kind of like a rock music gossip site, I guess would be the easiest way to describe it. But they also, I think they like promoted different stuff as well, different bands, and they had interviews and reviews, but it was kind of a strange thing. It was kind of like, a bit gossipy, because they lived in LA and they were kind of part of the LA scene, and so they seemed to know people. It was Travis Keller. Was it Travis Keller? Because that name sounds... Travis something. And that guy there, Aaron North. They were the main guys on the website. I think they owned or co-founded the website together. Their names were the ones featured on it. Anyway, Aaron North also had a band, the Icarus line, and they were featured a lot on that website. Aaron North actually went on to be a guitarist in Nine Inch Nails. In the, what period was it? It would have been the With Teeth period. Up to about year 0. So not very long. Was it longer than that? No. I'm trying to think. I don't think it was up to the Slip. But he was certainly on that With Teeth tour. He was on that. I think he had some problems with substance abuse, and he just didn't really last in the band, which is a shame because I like him as a guitar player. And even Trent Reznor, I've seen him, what he said about why he chose Aaron to be in the band, because he said they were having auditions, and it was just person after person, guitarist after guitarist coming in and being, how do you describe it? Playing the way that they thought Trent wanted them to play, or the way that Trent would play. Because obviously in the studio, most of the guitars on all the Nine Inch Nails albums, it's Trent playing. He basically plays everything. And so he said he was a bit bored of that. And then Aaron North came in, and he was in a bad mood, and his gear was all fucked up. And he put his guitar in and played in a completely different way than the other 100 people he had seen play before him that, the last week or so of rehearsals. And he played in a really kind of angry, pissed off way. And it kind of just stood out. And there's a really good version of March of the Pigs. What was it? I think maybe in Melbourne. If you search online on YouTube and look for a live version of March of the Pigs in Melbourne, I'm not 100% sure if it was in Melbourne, but I'm pretty sure it was Melbourne. And it's that's a great song, but it's a great version of that song. And Aaron North dives into the crowd. Like, he seemed to have a very chaotic atmosphere about him. But anyway, I'm talking a lot about Nine Inch Nails here. I'm not talking about this band. Like I said, these guys are kind of heavily influenced by Iggy Pop and the Stooges, Funhouse era Stooges. Like I said, they came out in the time of that kind of garage rock revival, indie rock type stuff in the 2000s. More punk, like say if you compare it to the Strokes or something like that, it's actually nothing like the Strokes, but if you compare, there's a lot more punk influence. You can hear the punk and the kind of harder edge, more kind of spiky in the sound, more aggressive and more, certainly not as accessible as any songs that came out of any of those other bands that I just named, like the Strokes or the White Stripes or the Vines. Their single was that first one there, Up Against the Wall, MFers. But it didn't really do anything. And this album didn't really do anything. It, as far as a major label debut release, not their debut album, but a major label debut, it kind of sold piss all. And I think they didn't get a follow-up to this. Aaron North left the band. He passed away. Don, I think his name was. Joe Cardamone. I follow him on Facebook still. I still see messages. I'm not sure if he's still in the band. I don't even know if the band still exists. It was over 20 years ago. This album's over 20 years old. So, out of the band, dead. Who knows with those two? God knows. I don't think he's in the band. The way that he writes, it doesn't sound like he's in the band. But yeah. So anyway, I was just surprised to find this because, like I said, it's just one of those things I haven't thought. I actually owned this album at the time. Who knows what happened to it? But seeing it there, and sale price was $3. So I got this for $3. So yeah, nothing really super exciting there, but I don't know, something nevertheless. So we'll leave it there. Thank you for watching.